Hey, so, tonight I want to share something personal. There's this moment that changed everything for me. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no slamming doors. Just a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon, my brother's voice on the other end, asking if we could talk. And in that instant, 5 years of carefully rebuilt walls came crashing down. You see, my brother didn't just take money from me. He took something deeper. He took the last piece of our father that I had left. And then, after all that tie-in, after Eid finally learned to breathe again, he came back asking for help. This is the story of how I lost everything to the person I trusted most, and what happened when he returned. If this kind of storytelling speaks to you, feel free to like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your thoughts or your own story. Sometimes, just knowing someone else understands makes all the difference. Now, dial in the lights, or put on your headphones, and let's begin. I remember the last good day I had with my brother. It was 3 weeks before Dad died, though we didn't know that then. We were sitting in Dad's hospital room, and Jake was doing this stupid impression of the nurse who'd just left. Dad was laughing, really laughing for the first time in weeks. His oxygen mask fogged up with each chuckle, and I remember thinking how good it felt to see Hyen happy, even for just a moment. Jake had always been the funny one, the charming one. Growing up, I was the serious older sister who got good grades and followed the rules. Jake was 2 years younger, and had this way of lighting up a room without even trying. People gravitated toward Hyen. I used to be jealous of that when we were kids. But somewhere along the way, I learned to just appreciate it. He made life lighter, more bearable. Dad squeezed my hand that day. His grip was weak, so much weaker than it used to be. I remember looking down at his fingers, once so strong, now thin and trembling, and feeling this crushing weight in my chest. This man who taught me how to ride a bike, who stayed up with me the night before my college entrance exams, who walked me down the aisle at my wedding. He was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. "Take care of each other," he whispered after Jake left to grab coffee. His voice was raspy, barely audible over the beeping monitors. "Promise me, you and Jake. You're all each other has left." I promised. God, I promised. Mom had died when I was 19. A sudden aneurysm that took her in her sleep. Dad raised us through those dark years, holding our family together with sheer will. And now, he was the one leaving. Jake and I would be orphans, adults, yes, but orphans nonetheless. The thought terrified me. The cancer had been aggressive. Stage 4 pancreatic. 6 months from diagnosis to hospice. Dad had been a planner his whole life, an engineer who believed in backup systems and contingency plans. So even as his body failed, his mind stayed sharp. He worked with his lawyer, organized his affairs, made sure everything was in order. "It's all handled," he told me one afternoon. "The house, the accounts, everything. Split down the middle, you and Jake, equal. That's how it should be." I didn't want to talk about money. I wanted to talk about memories, about all the things we'd never get to do together. But Dad needed this. Needed to know we'd be taken care of. So, I listened as he explained the will, the life insurance, the investment accounts had been quietly building for decades. "The lawyer has everything," he said. "Mr. Chen, good man. He'll walk you both through it when the tie-in comes. But Jake," he paused, catching his breath. "Jake will need to handle some of the paperwork. You're going to have your hands full, sweetheart. With your job, with Daniel, with everything. Let Jake take the lead on the estate stuff. He's good with details when he focuses." I should have questioned that. Should have wondered why Dad was specifically assigning tasks. But I was drowning in anticipatory grief, barely keeping my head above water. My marriage to Daniel was already shaky. The stress of Dad's illness had exposed cracks he'd been ignoring for years. My job as a graphic designer was demanding, and I'd been taking on freelance work to cover medical expenses insurance didn't touch. So I just nodded. Okay, Dad. Jake will handle it. Well, figure it out together. 3 weeks later, Dad died. It was a Thursday morning, just before dawn. The hospice nurse called at 5:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I stared at my phone screen for a full minute before answering, somehow knowing what she was going to say. Dad had passed peacefully in his sleep. No pain at the end. That's what she said. No pain. I called Jake immediately. He didn't answer. I called again and again. Finally, on the 4th try, his girlfriend Amanda picked up. "Hez sleeping," she said, her voice thick with sleep and irritation. "Amanda, it's Dad." "Hez gone." Silence. Then rustling. Jake's voice confused and distant. More rustling. The phone dropping, a muffled sob. When Jake called me back 10 minutes later, he sounded destroyed. We cried together over the phone, two orphans trying to process a loss that felt too big to hold. We made plans to meet at the hospital, then at Dad's house. There were so many things to do: funeral arrangements, notifications, paperwork, the machinery of death that starts grinding the moment a heart stops beating. I don't remember much about the funeral. It's all a blur of black clothes and casseroles and people saying, "Hez in a better place now." I stood next to Jake at the graveside, our shoulders touching, and felt Hyan shaking with silent sobs. I put my arm around Hyan. My baby brother, we only had each other now. After the funeral, people came back to Dad's house. Our house, I guess Jake's and mine. Neighbors brought food. Dad's friends from the engineering firm shared stories. Someone played Dad's favorite jazz records. It should have felt like a celebration of life, but it just felt empty. Jake pulled me aside at one point, into Dad's study. The room still smelled like high-end Old Spice, and coffee, and old books. "I can't believe he's gone," Jake said, his eyes red-ryaned. "I keep thinking he's going to walk through the door." "I know. Listen, about the estate stuff." He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so similar to Dad's it hurt to watch. "I know Dad wanted me to handle the paperwork, and I will, I promise. But I'm barely holding it together right now. Can you give me a few weeks to just grieve before we dive into all that?" The lawyer's name was Patricia Green. She had kind eyes and a firm handshake, and when I told her my story, she didn't seem surprised. "Unfortunately, I see this more often than you'd think," she said, sliding a legal pad across her desk. "Family and money, it brings out the worst in people. Can I fight this?" She took a breath. "Tell me exactly what happened. From the beginning." I walked her through everything. Dad's illness, the conversations about the estate, Jake's assurances, the papers I'd signed, the phone calls to the banks. Patricia made notes, her expression growing gryenmer. When I finished, she set down her pen. "The papers you signed, do you have copies?" "No." Jake took them all. "That's a problem. Without knowing what you signed, I can't tell you if you unknowingly authorized any of these transfers." "I didn't authorize anything." "I wouldn't. I believe you. But legally, your signature on a document creates a presumption of consent. We'd need to prove fraud, forgery, or undue influence. That's difficult without hard evidence. What about Dad's will? Doesn't that say it was supposed to be split? Do you have a copy?" "No. Mr. Chen would. Then, well, subpoena it. That's our starting point. If the will clearly states your inheritance was to be split equally, and the bank accounts were changed after your father became incapacitated or died, we might have grounds for a lawsuit." "Might. I need to be honest with you, Miss Mitchell. These cases are expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally devastating. Even if we win, and that's a big if by the time we get a judgment, the money might be gone. If your brother spent it, collecting becomes another legal battle." I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "So, I'm just screwed?" "Not necessarily. But you need to go into this with realistic expectations. The legal system isn't designed for quick justice. especially in family disputes. And there's another factor to consider. What if we pursue this, and it turns out those documents you signed actually did authorize the transfers? If you gave Hyen power of attorney or signed off on beneficiary changes without reading carefully, you could end up owing your brother attorney's fees. I didn't sign anything like that. I wouldn't. People sign things all the time without reading them carefully, especially when they're grieving. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just preparing you for what we might discover. I left Patricia's office feeling worse than when Id arrived. She'd taken my case, but her caution felt like a countdown to disappointment. The next step was getting Dad's official will from Mr. Chen. When I finally sat in his office and read it, my hands shook. I leave my entire estate to be divided equally between my children, Sarah Mitchell and Jake Mitchell. There it was, in black and white. Dad's wishes, clearly stated. This was signed 3 years ago, Mr. Chen explained. Your father updated it after your mother passed. As far as I know, this is his final will. Then, how did Jake? The will dictates what happens to property and assets that pass through probate. But most of your father's assets had designated beneficiaries, bank accounts, life insurance, retirement funds. Those passed directly to the named beneficiary, bypassing the will entirely. If those beneficiary designations were changed, legally, the will doesn't govern them. So even though Dad's will says we split everything, if Jake changed the beneficiary forms, then those assets go to Hyen, regardless of the will's instructions. The only way to challenge that is to prove the changes were made fraudulently, or when your father lacked the mental capacity to make such decisions. Dad was sharp until the very end. He had cancer, but he was lucid. Then, proving he didn't make those changes becomes very difficult. I obtained copies of the beneficiary change forms from the banks. It took weeks of fighting through red tape, providing death certificates, proving my identity. But finally, I had them. Dad's signature was on every single form, or at least what looked like Dad's signature. I stared at them until my eyes burned. The handwriting was shaky. Dad's hands had trembled badly near the end. But was it his? Or was it Jake's forgery? Patricia brought in a forensic handwriting analyst. He examined the documents for 3 weeks, comparing them to samples of Dad's verified signatures from earlier documents. It's inconclusive, he finally said. The signature shows characteristics consistent with both genuine execution by an elderly person with a tremor and possible cyanulation by someone attempting to replicate that handwriting. I cannot state with certainty either way. Inconclusive meant useless in court. We can still pursue this, Patricia said. But you need to know without definitive proof of forgery, this becomes a he said, she said case. It'll drag on for years and cost you tens of thousands in legal fees. And you might lose. During all of this, Jake wouldn't speak to me. I called, texted, emailed. Nothing. It was like Head vanished from my life, taking with Hyen not just the money, but any chance of understanding why. Amanda, his girlfriend, finally agreed to meet me for coffee 3 months into the legal process. He's not doing well, she said, stirring her latte without drinking it. This whole thing has really messed Hyen up. This whole thing has messed him up? I know you're angry. I get it. But you don't understand what he's been going through. Then help me understand. She sighed. Jake's been struggling financially for years. Way before your dad got sick. Hez got credit card debt, student loans he can't pay. He was getting collection calls, threats of lawsuits. He was drowning. So he stole from me? He didn't see it as stealing. Your dad told Hyen she stopped. What? What did Dad tell Hyen? The coffee shop was called The Grind, a deliberately edgy name for a deliberately hipster place in a neighborhood that had gentrified since Id last visited this part of town. I arrived 20 minutes early, partly because I'm always early, and partly because I wanted the psychological advantage of choosing my seat, settling in, having a coffee already in hand when Jake walked through the door. I picked a table by the window. Escape route clearly visible. Back to the wall. I felt ridiculous for thinking in those terms, like I was preparing for an ambush instead of meeting my brother. But the knot in my stomach didn't care about logic. Marcus had offered to come with me. Moral support, had said, or just someone to physically stop you if you decide to throw your coffee at Hyen. Id kissed Hyen and said no. This was something I needed to do alone. Now, watching the door, I regretted that decision. Jake walked in at 2:03 p.m., 3 minutes late, which was actually early for Jake. I barely recognized Hyen at first. Head lost weight, a lot of it. His face was gaunt, almost hollow, with deep circles under his eyes that made Hyen look 10 years older than 34. His clothes hung loose, and his hair needed a cut. He looked like someone who'd been through something terrible. Good, whispered a vindictive part of my brain. Let Hyen suffer. He spotted me and approached slowly, like I might bolt. Sarah, thanks for coming. I didn't say anything, just gestured to the seat across from me. He sat, carefully, placing his hands flat on the table like he was trying to prove he wasn't armed. You look good. Healthy. Don't. Right. Sorry. He glanced toward the counter. I should get coffee. Do you want? I already have some. Okay. Just give me a minute. I watched Hyen order at the counter, fumbling with his wallet, dropping his credit card twice before finally completing the transaction. His hands were shaking. When he returned with his coffee black, like Dad used to drink it, he sat in silence for a long moment, just staring into the cup. I waited. Let Hyen sit with the discomfort. After 5 years, Id learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is sien pli, not fill the silence. Finally, he spoke. I've been trying to work up the courage to call you for months, maybe years. I kept picking up the phone and putting it down. Why now? Because I don't have any other options left. And because, he took a shaky breath, because you were right. About everything. And I'm sorry. I felt something twist in my chest. Not relief, not vindication, something more complicated and painful. You're sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't fix what I did. But I need you to know that I understand now. What I took from you, what I destroyed. Jake lifted his eyes to mine for the first time, and I saw tears there. Every day for 5 years, I've lived with what I did, and it's been eating me alive. I wanted to feel satisfied. This was what Id fantasized about in the dark, months after the settlement. Jake broken, apologizing, finally understanding the magnitude of his betrayal. But sitting across from Hyen, seeing the physical manifestation of his guilt, I just felt tired. What do you want from me? I'm going to explain everything. The whole truth. And then I'm going to ask you for something, and you're going to say no, and I'll deserve that. But I have to try anyway. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup, steadying Hyen's self. When Dad got sick, I was in really bad shape. Worse than Amanda told you. I wasn't just in debt, I was being threatened with legal action. I'd maxed out 6 credit cards, taken out payday loans, borrowed from people I shouldn't have borrowed from. I was about to lose my apartment, maybe my job. I was drowning, and I couldn't tell anyone because I was so ashamed. You should have asked for help, I know. But I couldn't admit how badly Id fucked up. Especially to Dad. He was dying, and I couldn't burden Hyen with my disasters. So I just spiraled, borrowed more to pay back what Id borrowed before. Classic debt trap. That doesn't justify. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm trying to explain how I got to the point where I could do what I did. Go on. He took a sip of coffee, gryonessing like it burned. One night, about a week before Dad died, I went to see Hyen alone, late. You and the nurses had just left, and I broke down, told Hyen everything. The debt, the threats, how scared I was. Jake's voice cracked. Dad held my hand and told me it would be okay. That head make sure I had what I needed to get back on my feet. I thought he meant head leave me a little extra, or that there was some emergency fund I didn't know about. I didn't think. What? 2 days later, Dad gave me some papers, beneficiary change forms for his accounts. He said he wanted to make sure I was taken care of, that you had your career, your stability, and I needed help more urgently. He said it wasn't about loving one of us more, just about addressing need. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Dad did this? Some of it. The life insurance, one of the bank accounts, those changes were real. Dad signed them. I watched Hyen do it. But Jake's voice dropped to almost a whisper. But not all of them. The Schwab account, his pension, a couple other things. Those beneficiary forms came later, after he died. You forged them. I told myself I was just completing what Dad had started. That head intended to change all the accounts but ran out of tie-in, that I was honoring his wishes. The mental gymnastics I did to make myself believe that. He shook his head. I was desperate, and I convinced myself that desperate circumstances justified fraud. And the papers I signed? Power of attorney forms, real ones. You gave me the legal authority to manage the estate. I used that authority to forge the additional beneficiary changes. Your signature on those POA forms is what made it all legal enough that you couldn't fight it in court. You authorized me to act on your behalf, and then I betrayed that authorization in the worst possible way. Jesus Christ, Jake. I know. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? Tears were streaming down his face now. The money didn't even help. I paid off the debts, felt this huge relief for maybe a month. And then I started spending again. New car, new apartment, thinking I deserved it after everything I'd been through. Within 2 years, I was broke again. All that money, everything I destroyed our relationship over, and I pissed it away. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to rage at Hyen, to scream about the year I'd spent drowning in legal fees and panic attacks while he drove a new car. Part of me just felt sad for Dad, for the family we used to be, for the irreversible nature of it all. Where's the money now? Gone. All of it. I had to declare bankruptcy last year. Lost the car, the apartment, everything. I'm living in a shitty studio in the worst part of town and working retail to make rent. Amanda left me 2 years ago. My credit is ruined. I have nothing. He looked at me with red Ryaned eyes. The clinical trial application was a monster 47 pages of medical forms, family history questionnaires, psychological assessments, and legal waivers. I spent 3 weeks tracking down records, calling distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, navigating the bureaucratic nightmare of getting deceased parents' medical files released to adult children. Dr. Sarah Chen, the oncologist running the trial, interviewed us together. Her office was warm despite the fluorescent lighting, filled with plants and framed photos of her own family. I need to understand your support structure, she said, looking between Jake and me. This trial is intensive, 3 infusion sessions per week for the first month, then weekly for 6 months, surgery in month 4 if the tumors shrink enough. Extensive recovery periods. Mr. Mitchell, you mentioned your sister will be your primary support person. Jake glanced at me nervously. Yes, Sarah's agreed to help. Dr. Chen turned her attention to me. Miss Mitchell, do you understand what that entails? Transportation to all appointments, monitoring for side effects at home, potentially helping with basic care tasks if he becomes too weak. It's a significant commitment. I do. I'm prepared for that. May I ask about your relationship? The questionnaire mentioned some family tension. That was putting it mildly. I chose my words carefully. We've had difficulties in the past, significant ones. But I'm committed to helping Jake through this treatment. Dr. Chen studied me for a long moment. I appreciate your honesty. Family dynamics often complicate medical care. If at any point you feel unable to continue as his support person, please let me know immediately. We can explore other options." She accepted Jake into the trial 2 days later. The first infusion session was on a Tuesday in October. I picked Jake up from his studio apartment, a gryan little box in a building that smelled like mildew and defeat. He was waiting outside, thin in an oversized jacket, carrying a backpack with a blanket and his phone charger. "You didn't have to come up," he said as he got in the car. "I would have met you down here, part of the rules. I drive you to and from every appointment. That means picking you up at your door." The infusion center was nicer than I'd expected, more like a spa than a hospital wing. Comfortable recliners, warm blankets, volunteers offering snacks and magazines. We checked in and were shown to Jake's assigned chair. "You can sit next to Hyen during the infusion," the nurse said, gesturing to a padded chair beside Jake's recliner. "Most people bring books, work on laptops, whatever helps pass the tie-in." The first session usually takes about 4 hours. 4 hours. I'd brought my tablet loaded with design work, but found myself unable to focus. Instead, I watched the nurse insert the IV line into Jake's port, a device they'd surgically yen-planted in his chest the week before. Jake winced as the needle went in. His eyes were closed, his breathing deliberately slow. "Does it hurt?" "Not the infusion itself. The port just feels weird. I'm still getting used to it." The drugs started flowing, a cocktail of chemicals designed to kill the rapidly dividing cells in Jake's colon. Unfortunately, they also killed other rapidly dividing cells. Hair follicles, digestive tract lining, bone marrow. "You'll likely start feeling nauseous about 2 hours in," the nurse explained. "That's normal. We've prescribed anti-nausea medication, but it doesn't work for everyone. If you need to vomit, there are bags in the seat pocket." Jake nodded mutely, his jaw tight. I pulled up work on my tablet, trying to give Hyen privacy. But every few minutes, I found myself glancing over, watching his face for signs of distress, noting when his breathing changed, or his hands clenched on the armrests. 2 hours and 15 minutes in, Jake lurched forward, grabbing for the vomit bag. I looked away while he was sick, giving Hyen what dignity I could. When he finished, I wordlessly handed Hyen napkins and a bottle of water. "Thanks," he whispered. "We didn't talk much during that first session." What was there to say? The silence between us was heavy with history, years of betrayal and anger and lost connection. But it was also strangely comfortable, familiar in the way only sibling silence can be. Near the end of the infusion, Jake spoke suddenly. "Do you remember when Mom took us to the state fair? I must have been 6 or 7. I remember. You insisted on riding the zipper even though you were barely tall enough. I threw up cotton candy and funnel cake all over myself after that ride. You held my hand while Mom cleaned me up. Told me it was okay, that everyone gets sick sometimes. Why are you thinking about that? Because you've always been there when I needed you. Even when I was a stupid kid making bad decisions." Even his voice caught. "Even now, when I don't deserve it. Don't. We're not doing emotional processing in the chemo chair." "Right. Sorry." But I reached over and squeezed his hand briefly before pulling away. He squeezed back. The side effects started that night. Jake called me at 2 a.m., his voice thick with pain. "Something's wrong. My stomach, it feels like it's on fire." "Did you take the anti-nausea pills?" "Yes, but they're not working. Should I go to the ER? Let me call the after-hours line." I spent 20 minutes on hold with the hospital's oncology hotline, Jake's ragged breathing on speakerphone the whole tie-in. Finally, a nurse picked up. "Severe stomach pain is common after the first infusion," she said. "If there's no blood in his vomit or stool, no fever above 101, it's likely just his body adjusting. He can take extra-strength Tylenol and use a heating pad. Call back if symptoms worsen." I relayed the information to Jake. Okay. I can do that. Sorry for waking you." "It's fine. Call if you need anything else." I didn't sleep the rest of that night, just lay in bed staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring again. Marcus rolled over at some point, half asleep. Is he okay? I think so. The nurse said it's normal. And are you okay? I don't know. He pulled me against his chest, and I finally relaxed enough to doze. The pattern repeated 3 tie-ins a week. Drive to Jake's apartment. Take Hyen to the infusion center. Sit for 4 hours while poison dripped into his veins. Drive Hyen home. Field the late-night phone calls when side effects hit. After the first 2 weeks, Jake's hair started falling out. I arrived one morning to find Hyen on his bathroom floor, surrounded by clumps of dark hair, crying. It's stupid, he said, wiping his eyes roughly. I knew it would happen. But seeing it, it's not stupid. It's scary. I look sick now. Before, I could pretend I was just tired. But now everyone will know. Do you want me to shave it? Having it fall out in chunks is worse than just cutting it off. He nodded mutely. I found clippers in his bathroom drawer, probably from back when he used to buzz his own hair to save money. I draped a towel around his shoulders and carefully shaved his head, watching months of growth fall away in neat lines. When I finished, he looked in the mirror. His eyes filled with tears again. I look like Dad did. At the end, I know, we sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us remembering. Sarah, can I ask you something? What? Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just about keeping promises to Dad. There's more to it than that. I thought about lying, about deflecting. But Jake had been honest with me, brutally, painfully honest. Maybe I owed Hyen the same. Because when you called, I had 2 choices. I could prioritize my anger and my hurt and everything you did to me. Or I could prioritize the fact that you're a human being who's sick and scared and alone. And I stopped, trying to find the right words. I didn't want to become the kind of person who can walk away from someone in crisis, even if that someone hurt me. That's not who I want to be. So I'm doing this as much for myself as for you, because I need to know I'm capable of choosing compassion even when it's hard. That's very Jake's voice cracked. That's very you. Always thinking about the bigger picture. The person you want to be. Is that a criticism? No. It's one of the things I always admired about you. You have principles. You stick to them even when it costs you. I was never like that. I always took the easy path, made the convenient choice. That's how I ended up forging those documents. It was easier than admitting I'd fucked up and asking for legitimate help. We're not having this conversation right now. When can we have it? I don't know if we ever can. But even as I said it, I knew we would eventually. All of this, the appointments, the care, the middle-of-the-night phone calls, we were building toward something. Toward a conversation that would either let us move forward or cement our permanent separation. By week 6, Jake had lost 30 pounds. His skin had a grayish tinge. He moved like an old man, shuffling and slow, but the tumors were shrinking. Dr. Chen showed us the scans, pointing to the masses in Jake's colon that had been the size of golf balls and were now closer to marbles. This is an excellent response, she said. If this continues, we can schedule surgery for month 4 as planned. The goal will be to remove the remaining tumor mass and any affected lymph nodes. Jake gripped my hand so hard it hurt. When I glanced at Hyen, tears were streaming down his face. That night, he asked if I'd stay for dinner. Nothing fancy, just toast and soup. That's all I can keep down anyway. But I don't want to be alone right now. I texted Marcus that I'd be late, then sat at Jake's tiny kitchen table while he heated up canned soup on a hot plate. This place is depressing, I said before I could stop myself. It's what I can afford. Turns out declaring bankruptcy really limits your housing options. I looked around the studio. 1 room serving as bedroom, living room, and kitchen. A bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. No decorations except a single framed photo on the nightstand. I walked over to look at it. The picture was from my wedding 12 years ago, before everything fell apart. Jake and I were standing together, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning at the camera. We looked so young, so unburdened. I kept that through everything, Jake said quietly. All the moves, the bankruptcy, all of it. It reminds me of who we used to be. Who I want us to be again, even though I know that's probably yen possible. Why did you keep it? Because for all the terrible things I've done, for all the ways I've failed, loving you was never one of them. You're my sister. That never changed. Even when I was at my worst, I felt tears burning. That's not fair. You can't say things like that. It's true, though. I stole from you, lied to you, destroyed your trust. But I never stopped loving you. I know that doesn't make it better. Love without integrity is meaningless, but it's the truth. I sat down heavily on his bed, the only place to sit besides the kitchen chair. I don't know how to reconcile those things. How you could love me and still do what you did. People are complicated. We're capable of loving someone and still hurting them, of having good intentions and still making destructive choices. I'm not trying to excuse what I did. I'm just saying it's possible to hold both truths at once. We ate soup in silence. Outside, sirens wailed past. Someone in the apartment above was walking, heavy footsteps that shook the ceiling. Before I left, Jake stopped me at the door. Sarah? However this ends, whether I make it through treatment or not, whether we ever truly fix things or not, thank you for giving me a chance to try to be better. That's more than I deserved. I drove home through blurry tears, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. Marcus was waiting up. He held me while I cried, not asking questions, just being there. This is so much harder than I thought it would be, I whispered into his chest. I thought I could just help Hyen practically and keep my emotions separate. But I can't. Hez still my brother, and part of me still loves Hyen, even though I hate myself for it. Love isn't a weakness, Sarah. Even love that's complicated and messy and painful, I don't know what to do with it. You don't have to do anything with it right now. Just get through treatment. Help Hyen survive. The rest can come later. But could it? Could we ever move past what Jake had done? Or would this permanent scar always sit between us? A reminder of trust broken beyond repair. I didn't have answers. All I had was tomorrow's appointment, and the one after that, and the slow march toward either Jake's survival or his death, and the growing, terrifying realization that somewhere along the way, despite everything, Id started hoping he'd survive. Month 4 arrived faster than I expected. Jake's surgery was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, 8 hours in the OR, Dr. Chen had warned us. They'd remove the tumor mass, resection part of his colon, check the lymph nodes for cancer spread. This is the turning point, Shed said at the pre-op appointment. If we get clean margins and the nodes are clear, his prognosis yen proves dramatically. If not, she hadn't finished that sentence. Didn't need to. I took the whole week off work, the first vacation Tyen Id used in 2 years. Marcus wanted to come to the hospital, but I asked Tyen to stay home. I need to do this part alone, I said. Just me and Jake, like it was with Dad. He understood. He always did. The morning of surgery, I arrived at Jake's apartment at 4:30 a.m. He was already awake, sitting on his bed in the dark, wearing the clothes Id brought Hyen the night before, loose sweatpants, and a button-up shirt that would be easy to change out of. Ready? No. But I don't think I'll ever be ready, so we might as well go. The pre-dawn streets were empty, almost peaceful. We drove in silence, the radio off. When we stopped at a red light near the hospital, Jake spoke suddenly. If something happens during surgery, don't. Sarah, please. I need to say this. If something happens and I don't wake up, I need you to know that these past 4 months, having you back in my life, even in this Leonited way, it's been everything. It's given me something to fight for. The light turned green. I pressed the gas pedal, hands tight on the steering wheel, and I need you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. Not just for stealing the inheritance, but for betraying your trust, for destroying something precious between us, for making you question whether love and family mean anything. I can't take it back, but I am sorry. I know. Do you? Because I'm not sure I've really... Jake. I know. Okay. I know you're sorry. We pulled into the hospital parking garage. I found a spot on level 3 and turned off the engine. For a moment, we just sat there. Sarah, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? I don't know. I'm not there yet. Maybe I'll never be. But I turned to look at Hyan. In the Diane garage lighting, he looked so small, so young, despite the illness-aged face. But I don't hate you anymore. That's something. He nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. That's more than I hoped for. The pre-op process was mechanical check-in, vitals, IV placement, consent forms, a parade of nurses and anesthesiologists, all asking the same questions, confirming the surgical site, reviewing risks. Dr. Chen stopped by, confident and calm. Well, take good care of Hyan. The surgery should take about 8 hours. Someone will update you every 2 hours. You'll wait in the surgical family room on the 5th floor. Jake changed into the hospital gown, looking vulnerable and scared. When they came to wheel Hyan to the OR, he grabbed my hand. I'm scared. I know. But Dr. Chen is one of the best. You're in good hands. Will you be here? When I wake up, I'll be here. They wheeled Hyan away, and I stood in the hallway watching until the elevator doors closed. The surgical waiting room was designed to feel comforting. Soft chairs, muted colors, a coffee station in the corner, but nothing could disguise what it really was. A place where people sat in limbo, hovering between hope and grief. I tried to work, pulling out my laptop. Managed maybe 20 minutes of focus before giving up. I texted Marcus. Surgery started. 8 hours to go. His reply came immediately. I love you. It's lucky to have you. Am I doing the right thing? There was a pause before his response. You're doing a brave thing. Right or wrong, brave is enough. 2 hours in, a nurse came out. Miss Mitchell, your brother is doing well. They've started the resection. Everything is proceeding as expected. Thank you. 4 hours in, another update. They've removed the primary tumor. Clean margins so far. Now, checking lymph nodes. 6 hours in, 2 of the lymph nodes tested positive. They're removing the affected chain. This will add tie-in to the surgery. My heart sank. Positive lymph nodes meant the cancer had spread, meant worse prognosis, meant this might not be over even if Jake survived the surgery. Hour 7, hour 8, no update. I paced the waiting room, unable to sit still. Finally, at hour 9, Dr. Chen appeared in her surgical scrubs. She looked tired but not devastated. That had to mean something. Jake is out of surgery and in recovery. The procedure went well overall. We removed the tumor and a section of colon, took out the lymph node chain. He'll have a temporary colostomy for about 6 months while everything heals. Then we can reverse that with a second surgery. What about the positive nodes? 4 out of 18 nodes showed cancer. That's not ideal, but it's also not catastrophic. With aggressive chemotherapy, his 5-year survival rate is about 60%. Without surgery, it would have been less than 10%. When can I see Hyan? His still in recovery. Give it another hour, then we'll bring you back. That hour felt longer than the previous 9 combined. When I finally saw Jake, he looked more dead than alive, pale, intubated, connected to a dozen machines. A nurse was adjusting his IV. He'll be out for several more hours, she said gently. The anesthesia takes tie-in to wear off. You can sit with Hyan if you'd like. I pulled a chair next to his bed and took his hand carefully, avoiding the IV lines. His skin was cool, his pulse visible in his wrist. I sat there as afternoon faded to evening, watching Hyan breathe, watching his chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Somewhere around 7 p.m., His eyes fluttered open, confused, unfocused. The breathing tube prevented Hyen from speaking. I stood up, leaning into his line of sight. "I'm here. The surgery is over." "You did great." His eyes filled with tears. He squeezed my hand weakly. "The doctor will take the breathing tube out soon. Just rest." He kept holding my hand, and I let Hyen. 2 hours later, they removed the tube. Jake coughed violently, his voice raspy when he finally spoke. "Did they get it all?" "Most of it. There was some lymph node involvement. You'll need more chemo." "Am I going to die?" "I don't know. But you made it through surgery. That's what matters right now." "I'm so tired." "Then sleep. He'll be here when you wake up." He drifted off within minutes, his hand still holding mine. Marcus came by around 10 p.m. with a change of clothes and food I couldn't eat. He sat with me for an hour, not saying much, just being present. "You should go home," he said eventually. "Get some real rest. I can't leave Hyen alone." "The nurses are here. Hez stable. You're not doing Hyen any good by exhausting yourself." "I know. But I can't leave. Not tonight." Marcus kissed my forehead. "Call if you need anything." After he left, I curled up in the recliner next to Jake's bed and dozed fitfully, waking every time a machine beeped or a nurse came to check vitals. Around 3 a.m., Jake woke again. "Sarah? I'm here. Why didn't you let me die?" "What?" When I called asking for help. "You should have said no. Should have let me face the consequences of my choices alone." "Why didn't you?" "Because I'm not built that way. I can't watch someone suffer and do nothing, even if they deserve it." "Even me? Especially you. You're my brother. That has to mean something. Even after everything. I don't understand you. How you can be this good, this forgiving. I'm not forgiving you. Don't mistake help for forgiveness. They're not the same thing. Then what is this? This is me choosing who I want to be. Choosing mercy over justice. Choosing humanity over revenge. Not because you've earned it, but because I need to be able to live with myself." Jake was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "I will spend the rest of my life, however long that is, trying to be worthy of this gift you're giving me. Don't make promises you can't keep. I mean it. If I survive this, I'm going to do better. Be better. Not to earn your forgiveness, I know that may never come. But because you've shown me what real strength looks like. What real love looks like." "Love? You don't have to call it that. But what else do you call it when someone shows up for you at your absolute worst? When they help you even though you destroyed them? That's love, Sarah. The hard kind. The kind that costs something." I felt tears sliding down my face. "I'm so angry at you still. Some days I hate you, and some days I remember us as kids and I just feel sad for everything we lost. I know. I don't expect those feelings to go away. But maybe, if I survive this, we can build something new. Not what we had before that's gone, but something honest. Something based on who we really are, not who we pretended to be. Maybe. If you survive, I'm going to try. For me, yeah, but also for you. Because after everything you've done for me these past months, the least I can do is fight to live." He fell asleep again, his breathing evening out. I sat in the dining room, listening to the machines beep, watching my brother sleep, and felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet. Maybe not ever. But something gentler than the rage I'd carried for 5 years. Something like acceptance, or the beginning of it. Jake had stolen my inheritance, destroyed my trust, caused me immeasurable pain. Those facts wouldn't change. But he was also a broken, scared man, trying desperately to be better, trying to survive. And I was this someone who could hold space for both truths, who could acknowledge the harm while still choosing compassion. The sky outside the hospital window began to lighten, dawn creeping in with soft pink light. A new day. Jake had survived the night, survived the surgery. What came next was uncertain: more chemo, recovery, the possibility of recurrence. The question of whether we'd ever truly repair what had broken. But for now, in this quiet hospital room with my sleeping brother, it was enough that we were both here, both trying. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How is he?" I typed back. "Alive. We're both alive. That's a start," he replied. Yes. It was a start. The months after surgery were brutal. Jake's recovery was complicated by infections, setbacks, the grinding exhaustion of continued chemotherapy. There were days he couldn't get out of bed, days he sobbed from pain and frustration. I showed up for all of it. Not every day I'd learned to set boundaries, to take breaks when I needed them. But consistently, reliably, slowly, Jake grew stronger. The colostomy was reversed at month 6, a relatively simple procedure compared to the first surgery. The chemo ended at month 8, his body finally allowed to heal. His 1-year scans came back clear. No evidence of disease. We celebrated quietly, just Jake, Marcus, and me at a small restaurant. Jake looked almost like himself again, having gained back some weight, his hair growing in gray at the temples. "To Sarah," Jake said, raising his water glass. "For saving my life in every possible way. To survival," I countered, not ready for the weight of his gratitude. "And to hoping it sticks." We clinked glasses. Later, as Marcus and I drove home, he asked the question he'd been avoiding. "So what happens now? With you and Jake?" "I don't know. We're not where we were before he stole the inheritance. We'll never be there again, but you're somewhere. We're somewhere. Somewhere new. Somewhere more honest, maybe. Is that enough for you? It has to be. Some things can't be fixed, only rebuilt. And rebuilding takes time. It's been 18 months since Jake's surgery. 2 years since that phone call that changed everything. We see each other about once a month now. Coffee or lunch. Surface conversation mostly. He tells me about his new job, not great pay, but honest work. About the volunteer work he's started doing at a cancer support center. I tell Hyen about my promotion at work, about the house Marcus and I bought, about the normalcy I've built. We don't talk about the inheritance much anymore. What's done is done. The money is gone, spent or lost or dissolved into the past. No amount of talking will bring it back. But sometimes, in quiet moments, Jake will reference it obliquely. "I'm paying off the last of my medical debt next month," he said at our last lunch. "After that, I'm going to start a savings account. Not for me, for you. However long it takes, I'm going to pay you back. Maybe not the full amount. I'll probably never make enough for that. But something. To show you I understand what I took from you. You don't have to do that. I do, though. For me, not for you. I need to do what I can to make it right, even if it's not enough. Okay? If that's what you need." We finished our sandwiches in companionable silence. As we were leaving, Jake stopped me at the door. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "Do you think we'll ever be really okay? You and me?" I considered the question carefully. I'm learning that okay is complicated. We're not who we were. We won't ever be. But we're something. We're two people trying to do better with the mess we've been left with. Is that enough? Some days yes. Some days no. But it's what we have. He nodded slowly. Then I'll take it. However long it takes to earn more than that, I'll keep trying. We parted ways in the parking lot. I watched Hyen drive away in his used Honda, practical, reliable, nothing flashy. On the drive home, I thought about Dad. About that promise I'd made at 9 years old, holding my crying brother. I'd kept the promise, but not in any way I could have imagined. Not by protecting Jake from consequences, but by showing up despite them. Not by pretending the betrayal never happened, but by choosing to help anyway. Some days I still felt angry. Some days I mourned the simpler relationship we'd had before money and desperation destroyed it. Some days I wondered if I'd been a fool to help Hyan, but most days I felt something quieter. Something like peace, or the beginning of it. I'd made a choice to be the kind of person who could hold pain and compassion in the same hand. Who could acknowledge harm without letting it consume me. Who could rebuild without forgetting. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. But it was something gentler than hate, and maybe, in the end, that was enough. Hey, if you're still listening, thank you. I know this story doesn't have a clean ending. There's no dramatic reconciliation, no moment where everything suddenly becomes okay. Real life doesn't work that way. What I learned through all of this is that family is complicated. That love and hurt can exist in the same space. That choosing to help someone who's wronged you doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. I also learned that boundaries are love. That you can show up for someone while still protecting yourself. That forgiveness isn't required for healing. Som Tien's acceptance is enough. Jake is alive. Hez doing better. We're building something new from the ruins of what we had before. It's yen perfect and uncertain, and some days it feels yen possibly fragile, but it's real. And maybe that's all we can ask for. If you're going through something similar, if someone you love has betrayed you, if you're struggling with whether to help or walk away, I can't tell you what to do. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone's capacity for grace is different. But I can tell you this: whatever you choose, make sure you can live with it. Not today, not tomorrow, but 10 years from now when you look back on this moment. Choose the version of yourself you want to become, and let that guide you. For me, it was choosing compassion over revenge. Choosing to show up, even when it hurt. Choosing to be my brother's keeper, even when he didn't deserve it. I don't regret that choice. Most days, and I guess that's all any of us can hope for, to make choices we can live with, and to keep trying to be a little bit better than we were yesterday. Dad would have wanted that for both of us. I'm sure of it now. So, I'm going to keep showing up, keep building, keep choosing humanity, even when it's hard. And maybe someday, Jake and I will find our way to something that looks like peace. Until then, we take it one day at a time. Be kind to yourself out there. Life is hard enough without us making it harder.